Do you know that feeling when you see something for the first time? You're immediately impressed by it, and so the consumerism inside you screamed, "You need this!" So you bought it, you use it for a few weeks, you still love the product, but something about it just pisses you off to no end. You wish you were part of the design team, so you could just change all those things you don't like about the products that you otherwise love. Well, the Onkyo E900M is kind of like that, except this time, you can actually do something to change it. Welcome to Earphoneus Fanaticus, aka the earphone freak. In this episode, we will explore in detail the Onkyo E900M. Let's start with the packaging. As usual, you have the earphone on the cover, and looking at it, you might be a little bit intrigued by its color scheme. Black, gold, and yellow, what is this, a bumblebee or Bruce Lee? Oh, so that's why the earphone is black and yellow. Next to the fancy pants high-res audio label, you can see a rather simplistic icon, telling you the earphone comes with a microphone, which of course we will talk about later in this video. On the back, we can see more interesting things, such as a blown-up view of the internals, driver configurations, and frequency response. This earphone is a hybrid driver earphone, meaning it utilizes both dynamic driver and balance armature drivers for making sounds. The dynamic driver responsible for the low frequencies seems to be positioned farther away from the sound tube than the two BA drivers which handle mids and highs. These drivers are fused together to form a stack, and the stack gets its own bore for sound conduction, while the dynamic driver occupies another bore that is a lot thinner than the other bore above it. I wish more companies would show blown-up views like this for their earphones, so that consumers like us can easily study the structure and try to explain the difference we hear, not exactly in terms of sound signature, but also things like soundstage and layering. Finally, the earphone is rated at 107 dB per milliwatt sensitivity and 16 ohm impedance. So really, this isn't necessarily a loud earphone, but it should still be easy enough to drive. But do note that since the impedance is this low, you need audio sources that has at most 2 ohms output impedance, so that the drivers inside can operate as intended, especially the BA drivers, because output impedance can really screw them over. But of course, we don't always have the luxury to know what the output impedance is on our audio sources, so the best thing to do is still trying out the earphone in person to see if it sounds weird. Speaking of trying out the earphones, in Hong Kong, I see a lot of stores carrying the E700M, but not the E900M. And I'm not even talking about headphone stores. I don't understand why, but it's just an interesting observation. The box opens from the side and we can see the high-res audio label showing up again. Flip over this cover for the first time and you'll be greeted with the earphone, the ear tips, and the carrying case. If we take out the whole assembly, we can find the warranty paper and loads of product information on the Comply ear tips. Yes, this earphone comes with Comply, so if you like those, you will be quite happy. Let's talk about the ear tips. We have two flavors, the Onkyo stock tips and of course the Comply. The earphone by default should be fitted with the Comply, so I guess that's what Onkyo wants you to try out first. Both ear tips come in 3 sizes, small, medium and large, and the medium Comply tips are already fitted onto your earphone. Let's look at the carrying case. It is small, simple yet functional. You can store your earphone and some accessories inside. I have a pair of spin-fit here for demonstration. This case is definitely not as premium as the leather case I showed in my EX1000 review, but the small size makes this case very easy to carry around. Not bad at all. And of course, it is also in black and gold because high-res. To be honest, the accessories are quite lacking for the price range. I expected more ear tip sizes, maybe a cleaning cloth, or even a 1/4-inch converter. An extra cable would be nice too. But considering the price I actually paid for a new pair, I shouldn't be as upset as other people who can't enjoy the awesome tax-free plus union pay plus Yodobashi's own surprisingly low price. So here's what you've been waiting for, the Onkyo E900M. It is average size for earphones, and it is comfortable to wear. Sound isolation is quite good too. It generally blocks out the higher frequency noise as well. But of course, this is not a loud earphone by design, so you do need to crank up the volume just a bit more to block out the surrounding. The material used here is nothing amazing, just plastic all around, but it does keep the earphone lightweight. Removing the ear tip reveals a rather unusual sound chip. It is oblique rather than the usual circular shape, and this could make swapping ear tips a bit of a trouble, especially when you're trying to put on ear tips with a solid core, such as this spin fit. I really have no idea why Onkyo chose this shape. I mean, it is comfortable with ear tips on, but a circular tube would have done the same anyway. Besides, with the way the balls are arranged inside the sound tube, I still don't see why an oblique design would be needed at all. But whatever, this is not a complaint but rather an interesting observation. If we look at the back, we see this golden part sticking out, and it looks like an extension of the MMCX connector at the front. And no, that golden plate doesn't appear to be perforated. It is hard to show on camera, but you will just have to trust me. Speaking of the MMCX connector, it has to be one of the loosest ones I've ever seen. It turns around way too easily, and it wiggles a bit more than usual with slight movements. Overall, the connector is average at best, but it's usable, I guess. So, build quality does look great for the E900M, but I haven't even mentioned the worst thing. The cable. For starters, the MMCX connection is loose. Sometimes I will lose sound on one side and I need to rotate the connector around to fix it. This should never be a problem with MMCX unless the cable has been plugged in and pulled out many times, and that is absolutely not the case here at all. Secondly, there is no metal wired ear guide. In fact, there is no ear guide whatsoever. I mean, yes, I know they're trying to cut costs and things, but are ear guides really that expensive to include? And you know what? I would even read about it if the cable didn't fall from my ears at least once every time I use it. Look, what I'm trying to say is, there are always reasons why things are designed in a certain way, or why some components are omnipresent, like, you know, an ear guide with a metal wire, or ones that are at least heat molded into a fixed curvature, instead of this flippy floppy mess that can't even be bothered with stress relief. The poor design doesn't stop there. The cable itself is knitted unlike what we usually see from earbuds, and it is enclosed in plastic sleeve. For the record, this plastic sleeve has to be the most rubbery one I've felt on a cable. Not only does it make the cable more likely to tangle, it has so much friction that you can't even move the wire split smoothly. And yes, you can have knitted cable while still maintaining a smooth wire split. It only requires the cable to be, you know, not rubbery. I have other minor issues with the rest of the cable. There is a mic and play pause button. Let's try out the mic. As you can hear now, it works, and the sound quality is fine. You can use it with your phone or computer. Right now I have the earphone plugged into my laptop for this recording. Just plug and play, easy to use. The play pause button though, man, it is such a piece of shit. Following the tradition of the cable connection, this button is also loose, and to properly use it, you don't just press the button, you have to press it and push against the back of the button like you're trying to squeeze a bacterium to death. This really isn't a huge problem for me because I never cared about mic control or music controls anyway. I have buttons on my audio sources that do just that. By the way, the button only works with Apple devices, but the mic should work on both. Another minor complaint about the cable is that the 3.5mm jack is not right-angled. From my experience, right-angle jacks are more durable and easier to fit into the pocket without fear of cable stress. Speaking of stress relief, there's basically none at any of the critical points. So to summarize, I absolutely hate the cable, and it is clear that Onkyo did not put much thought into cable design. It doesn't matter whether the cable is oxygen-free or made of gold or encrusted in diamond, if it doesn't even behave like a proper, practical cable. But I do want to point out that if you are as upset as I am with the cable, you can always swap it out for another MMCX cable. I haven't done that yet because I am cheap and I like to complain. So far my opinions on the Onkyo E900M has been quite negative, with the lackluster accessories and god-awful cable being my primary complaints. But this is the moment when everything changes. I'm going to talk about the sound signature. The E900M is quite simply treble heads heaven, and I quite love it. that's it, that's the end. Nah, just kidding. Let's start with the bass first. At 10 Hz, you're most likely not going to hear anything at normal volume, and even 20 Hz is rather weak. It's not a big deal, but bass extension is just not as good as the EX1000, which easily reaches 10 Hz. From 20 Hz to 200 Hz, there is a gentle yet obvious rise in volume. This combination of tuning results in the bass having a rather weak kick, and you're not going to get that deep bass rumble that most casual audio lovers perceive to be good bass. Ear tips can fix that a bit though, and I'll definitely talk about that later on. Despite the weak bass response, the dynamic driver responsible for the bass still rattles a bit at 30 to 60 Hz, but this shouldn't be noticeable under normal circumstances. Overall, I think it's obvious that bass is not Onkyo's focus here, because if they wanted, they could have easily bumped it up. But to be honest, I think Onkyo might have went too far with the bass tuning, making the dynamic driver sound more like balanced armature. EQ can fix this rather easily though. The mids is well done. Once again, like I've mentioned in the EX1000 review, I'm not picky when it comes to mids because this is the frequency spectrum that is really hard to mess up. And as such, I'm terrible when it comes to describing mids. All I can say is, the mids on this is very smooth and slightly laid back, but not so laid back that vocals are drowned out in busy tracks, like the UE900. Now, the E900M strikes a good balance here. Female vocal shines with this earphone. Male vocal or cello are great too, but some might prefer slightly more richness. But personally, I can appreciate the style of sound Onkyo is going for here. Finally, let's talk about treble. When I first tried on the E900M in Japan, I did not expect it to sound so much like my unique Melody Maverick, which are more than 4 times surprised compared to this. Part of the reason why they sound so similar is because of the way the treble is tuned. They're not completely identical. For instance, the E900M lacks a sharp 12 kHz peak the Maverick possesses, and beyond that, they peak at slightly different frequencies. The E900M in particular peaks from 13 to 14 kHz, but similar to the Maverick, the E900M possesses a rise from 8 kHz to 9 kHz. These combined result in that same resolving, thin and delicate treble that I love so much. In fact, I would say the treble and the smooth mids are the biggest reasons why I am so impressed, and if getting this kind of sound signature means I have to trade away things like, I don't know, good cables, accessories and more ear tips, I say it's worth it. That's not the right way to go about things, really. But as amazing as the treble is, it is by no means perfect. Sometimes it might sound a bit hot, and to those coming from darker sounding earphones like the Shure SC215, you will probably find it piercing or even annoying. Now my mom, who isn't as sensitive as I am to sound quality, even found the treble to be distracting, and that only those soundtracks with their much higher frequencies are enjoyable with the E900M. I disagree, because like I've said, I love treble, so I can easily tolerate it. But I can see why some people don't enjoy it. Now another cool thing about this sort of high frequency, bright tuning is that even low quality files can sound hi-fi if the tuning isn't overboard. And the E900M sits very close to the point of being unforgiving to low quality masters, but it's not quite there yet. So overall, I love how Onkyo tuned the highs on this, but I would dial it down just a very tiny bit to avoid that sort of hotness. Now let us move on to other aspects of sound quality. So let's start with soundstage. The soundstage on this isn't particularly wide because the drivers are not far away enough to give you that sort of out-of-the-ear experience. But regardless, this doesn't affect horizontal layering much, so you should still be able to locate where sounds are coming from quite confidently with this. In terms of vertical layering, while they are using 2 separate boards, one for the bass at the bottom and the other one for both mids and highs on top, I'm not convinced that there is any layering to speak of. Now granted, this is quite difficult to achieve and it is rare to find in most earphones. I do think that manufacturers in general don't exploit this aspect of multi-driver earphones enough. It could really add height to the music, giving you the sensation that high frequencies are at the top while the bass is at the bottom. And so far, the only earphone that has ever achieved this in my collection is the uber expensive Maverick. So I guess you kind of get what you pay for. I also want to touch on dynamic range real quick. I don't have machines for accurate measurements, but by ears I can only reach around 66 decibels in my room, so it could be quite a bit better really. Finally, I know most people who watch this kind of videos have third-party ear tips. So here, I'm going to discuss ear tip compatibility. I have Comply, Spiral Dots, and SpinFit. The Comply extends a bit more deeply than the stock silicone tips, and it features only a slightly wider bore, so you can expect the E900M to sound more boxed in with the Comply. I feel like the sub-bass is a little stronger than the silicones, so that's a definite improvement. Unfortunately, the same old issues like discomfort, irritation, clumsiness, and poor durability still plague the Comply for me, so it is not my first choice for outfitting the E900M. You can check out my EX1000 review to see why I'm not a fan of Comply ear tips. Next up, we have the Spiral Dots. And it is simply terrible with the E900M. It does sound more vertical, but sub-bass is completely gone, so this is a no-go. Finally, we have the SpinFit. I think this might be my favorite to use on this earphone, because it makes the earphone more exciting and detailed sounding, and it improves the sub-bass over the stock tips. Once again, because it extends more deeply and has a narrow bore, it will compress the height of the sound more. If you're into a more full-body sound, the SpinFit might not be for you, but if you find the earphone a bit too laid back and prefers a more intense sound, the SpinFit is a great choice. So to summarize, after almost 1 month of usage, I will still say the E900M is worth it. Sure, the package as a whole is not perfect. Like I said, the accessories are lacking and the cable is absolutely despicable. But let's be honest here, we don't use all the accessories all the time anyway. I mean, it's nice if the manufacturers include more of them, but most of them would just be stored away and never used. And for the cable, well, you can easily find replacements from other big brands. If you want a durable, chunky cable, you can go for Shu's silver or black cable, but make sure you buy the short one. If you want a lightweight knit cable, Ultimate Ears has you covered. And don't forget the vast sea of exotic premium cables out there. The choices are unlimited. Now, I'm not saying this is a reason that makes Onkyo's poor design excusable, but I'm saying it is remediable. It is not the end of the world, and the fix is easy and possibly cheap. When it comes to where it truly matters, I think Onkyo almost nailed it with this earphone. Great comfort, good isolation, and a delicate, bright sound signature that is almost a rare breed in modern consumer earphones make the E900M such a joy to own. Not to repeat myself, but I think Onkyo could have increased the bass more and smoothed out the hotness in treble just by a little bit. However, I do think Onkyo is in the right direction with this earphone. I look forward to a new flagship hybrids from Onkyo that has all my complaints about this model resolved and improve upon it in terms of sound quality. Till this day, I still look at the E900M like a baby Maverick, similar but not quite there. If you live in Japan, you've tried out the Maverick before, love the sound but could not afford it, the E900M is a great choice. That is, unless you can afford the proper, smaller brother, the unique Melody Macbeth. What do you guys think about this earphone? If you own it or have tried it before, leave your thoughts in the comment section below. If you have any question regarding this earphone, of course you can leave them in the comments too. Don't forget to drop a like and subscribe for more earphone reviews and unboxing in the future. Stay tuned.